After 2 consecutive losing seasons, the Cleveland Browns faced a huge challenge in 1976. Everyone in the organization was determined the team would turn things around in the season to come. Trades in the college draft brought in many new faces, and some welcomed old ones too, as Forrest Gregg surrounded himself with the type of player he had been, one with personal pride as well as athletic ability. Everyone from the smallest to the tallest player was certain that a dramatic turnaround would occur for the Cleveland Browns. The first hurdle was the Jets in the opener. The road back began with a scoring spree by the offense, which featured the return of Paul Warfield, who celebrated with the first touchdown of the new season. Reggie Rucker began defense of his receiving crown by catching 3 touchdowns as Mike Phipps hit on 11 of 15 and literally picked the Jets to pieces with perfectly placed passes. But just as he was having his greatest day, fate took a terrible turn for the young quarterback. Phipps was virtually lost for the entire season. But backup Brian Sipe entered the fray and was sensational in relief, hitting 7 out of 10 for 2 more touchdowns. The Browns' 5-touchdown aerial barrage produced a 38-point victory over New York, a perfect beginning to a crucial comeback season. The next week in Pittsburgh, Brian Sipe continued his hot hand, passing for 2 touchdowns in the first half to give Cleveland a 14-0 lead against the Steelers. This game signaled the debut of the Pruitt backfield. Mike Pruitt, the club's #1 draft choice, started at fullback and made his mark with a 70-yard day. But just when a major upset seemed in the making, the young Browns made mistakes. The steel curtain descended, and Pittsburgh went ahead to stay. The Browns had let a game they well might have won slip away. The next game was in Denver, where Cleveland's continued errors on offense and poor execution by the special teams resulted in a humiliating rout by the Broncos. Now, losers of 2 straight, and with Mike Phipps out indefinitely, the full burden of responsibility fell on the shoulders of Brian Sipe. The next opponent was Cincinnati, and though Cleveland lost again, Sipe was a sensation in defeat. The former national passing champion from San Diego State set a club record for most completions with 26. The Browns had lost 3 straight, and it appeared 1976 would simply be a repeat of the previous losing seasons. The next Sunday, the turnaround began in front of over 76,000 fans in a rematch with Pittsburgh. Don Cockcroft booted 4 long field goals to lead the offense. Cleveland needed every point it could get because, typical of a Brown-Steeler brawl, they had lost their quarterback early. Brian Sipe went out with a concussion, and an unknown 3rd-string quarterback and part-time dentist, Dave Mays, took over the controls. Thrown into his first NFL game, Dr. Dave led the Browns to their only touchdown of the game. It held up because the Browns' much-maligned pass rush tore through the Steeler forward wall and sacked Terry Bradshaw 4 times. The ferocity of their charge was symbolized by Joe Jones and this one memorable play. It sealed Pittsburgh's doom on a day Cleveland beat their arch rivals with only a single touchdown and a third-string quarterback in command. The next week in Atlanta, Greg Pruitt shot into the American Conference rushing lead by gaining a gaudy 191 yards and scoring 2 touchdowns. The Browns' yardage total on the ground was second best in Cleveland history. But more importantly, the win over Atlanta evened the team's record at 3-3. Back home against the Chargers, Pruitt, now the AFC leader in both rushing and receiving, continued to run rampant with 100 yards in the first quarter alone. Then, suddenly, shockingly, the little guy was down. Pruitt suffered a severely sprained ankle that rendered him virtually useless the remainder of the NFL season. But before 60,000 fans, the chills turned to cheers when Larry Poole came to the rescue. The long, striding slasher from Kent State totaled 119 yards against San Diego. But the big story was Brian Sipe, who completed 23 of 28 passes for 246 yards. Sipe broke Otto Graham's accuracy mark with 82%, and at one point connected on 12 consecutive passes to set another Cleveland record. Still, it took a fourth quarter strike from Sipe to Oscar Rohn to come from behind and defeat the Chargers by 3 points. The team had its third straight triumph and a chance to tie the Bengals for the lead in the AFC Central. But the Browns were at the halfway point of the season, 7 games to go, and they would have to go them without Greg Pruitt. The star of the Browns offense now became Brian Sipe. The backup quarterback took over for the injured Mike Phipps and became the big man of the Cleveland attack, particularly adept at rolling out and throwing short and medium-range passes on the run. Sipe completed 57% for 17 touchdowns in his first season as a starter. It was the most productive year for a Cleveland quarterback since Bill Nelson's heyday in the late 60s. Prime reason for Sipe's startling success was the balance the Browns had on the flank, where Paul Warfield and Reggie Rucker were the finest pair of pass receivers since Warfield and Gary Collins. Sipe suffered no fall-off in quality when he went to his tall, talented tight end, Oscar Rohn, number 81. A rookie who received raves from the coaching staff was Dave Logan, number 85, a 6'5" Gary Collins type who can play both the tight and wide positions. Reggie Rucker again enjoyed the distinction of being the leading receiver and scorer, and the man who made the big catch when it was most needed. This was the year the familiar name and number of Paul Warfield returned to Cleveland, and the fluid flanker with the deer-like glide and spring-like stride showed he retains the eye-popping ability that makes him one of the greatest to ever play the game. It was a wonderful welcome-home season for an old Cleveland hero. One of the biggest areas of improvement came from Forrest Gregg's pet project, the offensive line. Only the Cardinals' great line protected their passer better than the Browns. They were led by Captain Doug Deacon, number 73, while his partner at tackle was Barry Darrow, number 63. Pete Adams, number 69, and Bob Jackson, number 68, were the guards. And Tom DeLeon was in the center of things. They're young, and they can only improve with time. Things didn't quite pan out for the projected twin backfield of Greg and Mike Pruitt. This was due mostly to the surprise emergence of number 30, Cleo Miller, as a blocker par excellence for Greg Pruitt and a fine runner in his own right. With his balance and great determination, Miller gained over 600 yards for the year. Greg Pruitt's second consecutive 1,000-yard year was earned playing in great pain. For the final 7 games, Pruitt, with his torn jersey trademark, was virtually reduced to a one-legged halfback. But despite his battered ankle stinging with every step, he hung in to provide the solid football and spectacular excitement that is unique to the best little man in pro football. The season's second half began in Cincinnati, where Art Modell's squad found themselves in the heady atmosphere of a fight for first with the Bengals. But as young teams are apt to do, the Browns made costly mistakes, where only sharp execution would do. In a sloppily played game, Cleveland lost to Cincinnati, and their record fell to 4-4. The next week, the offensive problems continued until Greg Pruitt limped off the bench to throw a fourth-quarter option pass to Brian Duncan. Then, with his customary composure, Brian Sipe, on his only pass of the day, threw to Oscar Rowan for the touchdown that put the game beyond the Oilers' reach. Cleveland won 21-7. But it was much closer than it appeared. Now, victorious in 4 of their last 5, the Browns put it all together against the Eagles. With Greg Pruitt on the bench, Sipe directed a flawless air attack, hitting 15 of 21 for 200 yards, and 2 touchdowns to Rucker and Warfield. But once again, the offense was overshadowed by a pass rush that poured in on the Eagles. It was led by All-Pro tackle Jerry Shirk, who personally had 4 sacks as the Browns' defense combined for a total of 6 sacks and 4 interceptions, while limiting Philadelphia to just 21 yards passing. Ron Bolton's touchdown interception tied the ribbon on a 24-3 win. And with 4 games left, Cleveland had already doubled their victory total of last season. Cornerbacks Ron Bolton, who came in a trade with New England, and number 22 Clarence Scott, rebounding from a subpar season the year before, were important cogs in the Browns' renaissance. But the biggest factor was the return from injury of number 27 Tom Darden, the traffic cop of a Brown secondary that intercepted 21 passes, more than twice the total of the year before. Tom Darden had 1/3 of them and was named the team's Defensive Player of the Year. The outside linebackers were Charlie Hall, number 59, and Gerald Irons, who came in a trade with the Raiders. Irons' acquisition was important, for he brought a hard-hitting, winning attitude from Oakland, while his counterpart Hall had his finest season in 6 with the Browns. Bob Babich had reason to smile, for he regained his starting middle linebacker position from young, promising Dick Ambrose. Babich, number 60, had a fine season, consistently plugging the middle against the run. But the fair-haired boy of the defense was Jerry Shirk, the Browns' superstar defensive tackle. Shirk out-quicks opponents one play and out-muscles them the next. He led the team in tackles and quarterback sacks, and again was a consensus choice for All-Pro. This season, Shirk won additional honors with the announcement he was the winner of the George Halas Trophy as the top defensive player in the entire National Football League. Shirk's partner, venerable Walter Johnson, set a team record most consecutive games played and continued to use his brute strength to overpower anyone that gets in his way. At defensive end, 6'6" Mac Mitchell shared playing time with 6'5" Mike St. Clair, a rookie from Grambling with limitless potential. St. Clair gave Cleveland a big lift with his strong pass rush and exuberant personality. For the hometown kid from Cleveland, playing at the stadium was a childhood dream come true. At the other end was another free spirit, number 64, Joe Jones. This was the year Turkey learned to play the run, but of course, crushing the passer is what he loves to do best. All in all, it was a banner year for Dick Modzelewski's men on defense. They came flying off the line with the snap of the ball, penetrating deep and making their presence hard felt among their opponents. On the 11th week against Tampa Bay, the Browns achieved a perfect blend of offense and defense. Brian Sipe and Paul Warfield did the honors for the attack against the expansion Buccaneers, while Jerry Shirk and Joe Jones terrorized Steve Spurrier all afternoon. It finally resulted in Turkey's first touchdown in the pros. Cleveland had an easy win, their 6th of their last 7 games. If one single game could symbolize Cleveland's comeback season of '76, it was a snowy seesaw struggle with Miami in bitter cold weather. Against his former teammates, Paul Warfield celebrated his 34th birthday with a remarkable performance. As the snowflakes started to fall, the pace of the game quickened. Ahead by 1 point with just over 2 minutes to play, Brian Sipe called Larry Poole's number for one of the key plays in the game. Poole's 25-yard burst set up a clinching field goal try through the swirling snow. But typical of this snowy struggle, Miami came right back, and with 20 seconds remaining stood poised at the Cleveland goal line, with time for one more play. But an alpine avalanche of white jerseys buried Norm Bulash, and the game was over. $75,000 Brown fans roared their approval through the howling winds as their team left the field winners of 7 of their last 8 games, their faint playoff dreams still alive. The next week in the home finale against Houston, Cleveland won their 9th with Brian Sipe and Paul Warfield again leading the attack. Still, it remained for the defense to salt the game away on Charlie Hall's interception with over a minute remaining. The defense had allowed the miserly total of merely 40 points in the last 5 games, all of them Cleveland victories. The win was the 5th straight and 8th in 9 games. With 9 victories for the season, Cleveland had tripled its total from the year before and finished only a game behind the Steelers and Bengals in the AFC's tough Central Division. With their new spirit, the Browns had found an old success. For this, Forrest Gregg was named Coach of the Year. Yet Gregg and his staff aren't mesmerized by the 9 victories. For them, the Browns' dramatic reversal of 1976 is only the beginning.